Been digging into this as we promised to look at the facts, not the bar depictions. And I want to go into 2 points here. One is potentially bad news for Mr. Barr, and one is good news for Donald Trump Jr. What we see here is the way the Trump Tower meeting with Russians offering assistance was investigated and was ultimately legally analyzed. And I want to give the headline first, which is the good news for Donald Trump Jr. The Mueller report saying, taking into account the high burden, I'm reading, the high burden to establish the mental state in what they looked at this as, a potential campaign finance prosecution, and the difficulty, they say, of the valuation, which I'll explain in a moment. Mueller writes, quote, "We decided not to pursue criminal campaign finance charges against Donald Trump Jr. or other campaign officials for the events culminating in the June 9th meeting." Why that is important is it tells us how they looked at this issue. They looked at it as a potential crime violating U.S. campaign finance law if you knowingly solicit and then get something of value from a foreigner. And what they found, to put it in plain English, is that Donald Trump Jr. and apparently these unnamed or general reference to other campaign officials we know who was at the meeting didn't have the knowledge to support the high bar of a criminal charge, and that the office wasn't sure that they would be able to value that so-called, quote, dirt. If you say it is what it is, I love it. That dirt wouldn't be able to value it high enough for the charge. That's good news for Donald Trump Jr. The other piece of reporting I want to share, Brian, is potentially bad news for Mr. Barr. It is the fact that, as your reporters and our legal experts have noted, Mr. Barr and Mr. Mueller today have now broken with each other on what was under investigation. Mr. Barr using Donald Trump's Twitter speak to repeatedly intone with the authority of the Justice Department at that press conference, quote, "no collusion." And that we now know, Mr. Barr said, with the knowledge of and breaking with what's in this Mueller report that says very explicitly they didn't look at this in a, quote, collusion standard, which is only legally comes up rarely in antitrust law, but looked at it as a conspiracy standard. I think that's significant. Why did Mr. Barr feel the need to go that far? And the final thing I want to share from my read, and I'll come back to you as I think I have interesting things, is something that sounds bad, I think, for the actual people interviewed in the Trump campaign. And that is a statement here in the Mueller report that several Trump officials or people affiliated with the campaign continued to lie to the special counsel's office, including about Russia-related matters. That may sound obvious, but it's different when we talk about it in public and when Mueller says that's part of understanding this probe, its length and its intensity, Brian. The special counsel reporting in the report today that their investigation was, quote, materially impacted by those repeated lies. And so this goes back, I can read, the investigation established several individuals affiliated with the Trump campaign lied to the office and to the Congress about their interactions with Russian-affiliated individuals in related matters. Those lies materially, you see it right here, those lies materially impaired the investigation of Russian election interference. As you know from covering this, Brian, it's one thing to say somebody made a mistake or a single lie. Material impact, is Bob Mueller saying, part of the reason this went down this way and took so long is they kept lying to me about Russia. Now, he's not charging a Russia conspiracy, which again gets us back to the mystery. Why so many lies? That's an important thing that Mueller wants the Congress and now the public to know. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.